What's up everybody, this is Master Ian Gamer, and now that the last of the Overwatch Blizzcon panels have come to a close, I just wanted to make a sort of wrap-up video talking about a number of different things which were mentioned and announced towards the end of the final day. There's actually some pretty interesting things we've picked up on, including some rather unexpected details about Overwatch Hero 30, and even a little hint from Jeff that we could be seeing comics making a comeback in some form at some point in the future. So without further ado, let's jump right on in. To start, if you haven't heard already, it sounds like Blizzard is planning to get Ashe on the PTR as soon as possible. According to Jeff yesterday, they're hoping to have her on by Monday morning, but it is possible that she'll be held back by delays. So if you're like me and weren't able to actually attend BlizzCon and are looking forward to finally getting to try her out, just keep your fingers crossed that there aren't any unfortunate unforeseen consequences holding her back. Now, moving on to Hero 30, we actually got some rather interesting details about this character. All of this information came from Jeff Kaplan himself on Fran's livestream earlier today, and the first of these interesting details is that Hero 30 is actually playable already on Blizzard's internal build. Now keep in mind, when he says playable, that could mean that they just have the hero's abilities and mechanics pinned down and working, but they may not have any actual effects or graphical assets. As we've seen with past heroes during their development periods, they often take pre-existing assets and sort of mesh them together to create a sort of pseudo-image of what the hero will ultimately end up looking like, just for the sake of testing before they finalize the design. So it's possible that they're playable in this sort of bizarro Frankenstein form, and don't really have an appropriate appearance just yet, but it is certainly interesting to consider that Jeff is willing to admit that they're that far along already with the very next hero. In fact, you may even ask whether Blizzard is intending to speed up the rate of the new heroes they're producing, given that we know they are currently working on 6 different heroes internally at the moment, and Hero 30 at least is already playable in some form. Maybe they're going to be coming out sooner than March, which is when we would normally expect them to be released. There's actually a bit more evidence that could possibly be pointing towards this, but I'd rather save that for a separate dedicated video, which I'm planning to make a little later on this coming week. For the time being, I will just say, please don't get your hopes up or start expecting to get new heroes more quickly, but there certainly are some interesting new things to discuss regarding that possibility. And the next major thing that Jeff Kaplan talked about regarding Hero 30 specifically is that it will not be Ekko. Now, I already made a video that I published earlier today talking about this character who we saw at the end of the Reunion animated short, and in the video I was giving my thoughts about the character's backstory and what we can expect from them as being a future hero. Well, at this point, Jeff has 100% confirmed that they will be an upcoming hero, but that they will not be Hero 30 specifically. It's quite possible that they'll end up being Hero 31 or 32, or maybe they'll stretch it out to like 36 way down the line years from now, but I am still strongly convinced that they're going to be coming out sooner rather than later. If you haven't seen my video talking about Ekko and my thoughts on her, then be sure to check that out through the card on screen. Additionally, while I'm on the topic of Ekko, there was one other thing I wanted to mention about her, which is that, as I'm sure everyone has noticed at this point, she has a striking similarity to this character from the concept art way back in the day. A lot of people have theorized that this character is Athena, going by the A logo that's on her head, but Jeff Kaplan has now confirmed in multiple different interviews that the A we see in this concept art was simply put there to make the character look more visually interesting. It was never in Blizzard's intent for this character to actually be Athena, and it sounds like even from way back before the game's launch, this character was always meant to be Ekko. So with that in mind, it seems like there's a very strong possibility that Ekko and Athena don't actually have anything in common, aside from the fact that they're both female AIs. Maybe Blizzard will end up giving the two some kind of connection, given the long-running misconception now that has apparently been the case for this character, but I thought it was just worth mentioning that after all this time, we finally have the last nail in the coffin. Athena is never intended to be a playable hero. The speculation about that can finally officially end. Now, going back to some of the information talked about in Fran's stream, Jeff Kaplan did also make a rather interesting mention towards the Overwatch story, and specifically the comics. He said that the devs are aware of the community's dissatisfaction with the fact that there's only been one comic over the past year, but according to Jeff, it sounds like they actually have a plan for the comics moving forward. Now, he didn't give any specific details about what this plan is or when it's going to actually start picking up again, but he did additionally mention that there was a very specific reason that they stopped making the comics. Now, in my 2018 BlizzCon predictions from a couple weeks ago, one of the big things I predicted is that we'll end up getting more Overwatch story in the form of longer comics. Not like these short, free ones we can view on the internet, but rather bulkier ones that we'll probably have to end up paying for, but will contain a lot more story in a much higher production format. Personally, I'm entirely willing to spend a little money on some comics, because at the very least it'd make cool collectibles, and also it'd be a great way to support the game and the writing of the story directly. Now again, this paid long-form comic idea is just speculation on my part. Jeff did not specify that specifically, but it does seem like a reasonable direction for taking the story, given that animated shorts are an unreliable way to consistently produce a lot of different story iterations, so I wouldn't be surprised to see some kind of new comics. And additionally, one last interesting thing Jeff mentioned is that there are apparently big plans for the Archives event in 2019. People, of course, have been rather dissatisfied with the fact that the events recently have been pretty repetitive. They haven't really had new game modes or anything introduced during them, but it does sound like we can expect, at the very least, for Archives 2019 to have something exciting with it. Probably going to be a new PvE mission mode of some kind, but maybe it'll be something even more surprising that we'll just have to wait and see. Anyways, that'll wrap up these wrap-up news topics. If you want to actually see Jeff's stream with Fran, where he talked about a lot of these different things, I'll have a link to that stream down in the description, along with timestamps for each of the different things I talked about. But otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and let me know your thoughts about any of the things talked about here today. If Hero 30 isn't going to be Ekko, then who do you think it's going to be? As always, be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and share it with a friend if you really liked it. Subscribe, follow me on Twitter, and hit the bell to keep up with all my future Overwatch content. So, until next time, this is Master Ian Gamer signing off. It looks like BlizzCon has finally come to a close, so have a great day.